Hey everybody, how we all doing? Hope you're all doing well this Thursday. One more time. And we're here with another edition of the Game Boy-A-Thon. A series of streams where we play through we don't play through every game, but we play every Game Boy game ever released in North America, all 512. Devoting, somewhere from 15 to 30 minutes on each game, talking about their history, what's going on with them, and, why they're all special little gems, each one of them. Got 4 new games for you all today that I'm very, very excited to play. And they're all going to seem very unimportant, but once we kind of talk about them a little bit, maybe, hopefully y'all will end up disagreeing with that a little bit. You'll think, no, you know what? These are actually really cool. Hey, J-Spot, Worms Can, P-Bug. Also, yes, I guess this is normally not the stream to talk about like news or whatnot, but before we do start, I do want to say RIP E3. It's been a real one. E3's digital event has been canceled today after they announced that they earlier this year they were not going to have an in-person event, which means this is going to be the first E3 in a long time, or there's just going to be nothing. Which is, get your 40s. Pour them out, say your prayers, say your Hail Marys. Maybe E3 will be back next year. Bet you probably won't be. So goodbye, video game Christmas. We will all miss you. But you know what we won't miss? Some of these games that we're about to play, because they're going to be on your screen coming up here right now. So yeah. I agree, J-Spot. J-Spot says, it's good that it has finally passed. It was awful seeing it on its deathbed last year. Yeah, E3 was in a very depressing place last year. So it's kind of good that they just saw the writing on the wall for that. So yeah, once again, we have 4 games for you today. And once again, these games are going to be kind of odd in the sense of what we have selected. Once again, we select the games that are played each stream by taking all 512 games, and I literally just randomized them. So they're all going to come from different years, different eras of gaming history. Given that the Game Boy existed long enough that it literally overlaps with 3 different generations worth of consoles. So you could actually say that with the Game Boy. It's strange. But today, we're going to end up starting out with something that's probably not going to seem all that important. And that's going to be Felix the Cat. I did hear about that, Worms, yes. Let's go ahead and start out with good old Felix the Cat. Adjust my music here a little bit. So Felix the Cat, kind of a weird thing. This is a game that was released in 1993. Technically published by Hudson Soft, although the Game Boy version was published by Electro Brain, a company that worked very closely with Hudson Soft, Electro Brain being a United States company. It was developed by Shimada Kikaku, which we will talk about here in just a second, and released in 1993. So this is a kind of an interesting little game. It is a port of the NES version of this, with some differences being the level design's a bit different, and it's an overall shorter game. The NES version was the Nintendo Entertainment System version, I should say, was released in 1992, which, given that the successor system, the Super Nintendo, had already been out, at least in Japan for 2 years, it's one of those really strange late-era NES games that kind of makes you wonder why they exist. Like, there's definitely a reason why, because the NES had a large install base, so of course it's going to exist. So, see, it makes sense why they ended up putting it out ultimately, but obviously, as you can probably imagine, it felt pretty antiquated. Although, apparently the NES version did review relatively well, at least in North American trade magazines, such as EGM, getting like the equivalent of like an 8.0 out of 10 score, roughly about. So, the company that developed this is a company, once again, called Shimada Kikaku. Ooh, we're driving a cool car now. Shimada Kikaku is a bit of an odd developer. It's a very small-time developer overall. Oh, it's like Progressive Power. It's kind of like Super Mario Brothers. Interesting. So it's a company that was founded in 1992 by Junzo Shimada. Junzo Shimada used to work for a company called Sanritsu. Sanritsu itself was a company of not much note, other than it had a relatively close working relationship with Sega, doing ports of a lot of their arcade games to other platforms, such as like Outrun. Anyways, the story goes that he apparently got a bit fed up, and in 1992 was like, you know what, I can go ahead and make my own company and make my own games. And that's exactly what he did. And they found some level of success with developing licensed games, both based on North American and Japanese properties. Oh, don't worry, we're going to be getting to games with Blackjack and Hooker soon, Worms. Don't worry. But, spoilers for what's coming up, I guess. But, they basically ended up developing games for both, using both Western and Japanese licenses. So, obviously they did Felix the Cat. But they also developed a couple of Game Gear games, including one Game Gear game that was based upon, my god, Felix has a tank. Do not give a cat a tank. That is not right. But yeah, they ended up developing a Sailor Moon game for the Game Gear. That was Japan only. As well as a weird management game called Wedding Peach for the Super Nintendo. If anybody's ever played American Tail 5 Goes West for the Super Nintendo, they are also responsible for that as well. So yeah, a lot of work doing various ports, or not various ports, various like licensed games. And apparently that did particularly well for them. Of course, that well eventually did dry up though. Instead, they shifted their focus to mostly management simulators, specifically hamster-related management simulators. These include a Game Boy Color game called Hamster's Paradise, which I really want to play because it sounds wonderful. That was released in, I think, in 98? Oh, hello. Released in 1998. And another game for the PlayStation, which is actually their final game, called Hamster no Okuden. Oh, is that so, Worm? So Worm says that The Beast, another streamer, played Hamster Monogatari, which is, I believe, yeah, the direct Japanese translation of Hamster Paradise. But yes, you'd be correct. Yeah, so, unfortunately, there's no real footage of Hamster no Okuden for the PlayStation. And I hope to rectify that soon, because I want to play this game. Oh. Felix be flying. So yeah, after 2001, they unfortunately went out of business. No real successor company, and as far as I know, I don't know what else the various people of that company ended up ultimately doing. Oh, interesting. I might have to check that out, P-Bug. Not P-Bug, Worms. P-Bug says, Hamster's Paradise is my favorite Coolio album, and... Agreed. That was just a hot 1994 banger from him. So, as far as how this game plays so far, honestly, this is not bad. I can see why the NES version got pretty high marks overall. Gameplay seems to be pretty varied. It seems to use the Felix the Cat license relatively well. Felix, or this version of Felix anyways, was famous for his bag of tricks, which is literally a magic bag that he had. They could pull out and do different things, which is why he's able to do different things like fly airplanes and whatnot. So... seems like it uses that pretty well. It controls pretty well as well. It does have this strange thing, which is not really well represented on these, like, weird flying stage we're doing. Where, if anybody's ever used, like, Game Maker or Games Factory, you might... if you ever, like, made a game in that, you should know that, like, it has, like, its own, like, built-in jumping system that doesn't work very well. Like, if you jump into, like, ceilings, your momentum stops in a way that's very unnatural. This game sort of has that, which is a little weird. But, this otherwise plays very, very well, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And it's kind of interesting. It has, the health system is progressive in, like, a very Super Mario Brothers way. Like, you start out with, like, regular old Felix, and as you get his bag of tricks, you get slowly better stuff like this car, eventually becomes a tank, and you can take additional hits and whatnot. And that's just pretty neat overall. Do definitely enjoy that. I don't know why Felix is in Egypt right now, but he is. Oh, it's a bag of tricks. This actually feels very Super Mario Brothers inspired. Like, the bag of tricks act, oddly enough, like pipes. Now that I think about it. The health system, once again, is a very Super Mario Brothers inspired sort of system. Mario never had a tank, though, so... Well, not until Super Mario Odyssey, anyways, did Mario have a tank. And even then, he had to physically become that tank. He didn't drive his own tank. Mushroom Kingdom military knew better, I guess. So, we might as well talk a little bit about Felix himself. Whoa! Actually, before we do that, look at this guy. Weird pogo stick cigar chopping dog thing with a gun. It should be reminded that Felix the Cat is for children. Or at least this iteration of Felix the Cat is. So, we should talk a little bit about the origins of Felix the Cat, because I think people of my generation, so like the millennial generation, only has vague memories of Felix the Cat. Like, Felix was already kind of on its way out, even by the time this game came out. And, like, I vaguely remember it as being like a cartoon for old people, which is a bit rude. It's kind of a rude thing to say, but that's how my memory worked. Well, it turns out Felix the Cat was a very old cartoon. In fact, it's one of the oldest animated cartoons in existence. So, Felix the Cat was created by Paul Sullivan and Otto Mesmer. And it was first debuted in 1919 with a cartoon called Feline Follies. And this was before Felix even had a name. He was just a cartoon cat. J-Spot, by the way, mentions that there was a Saturday morning reboot around the time this game came out, and that's correct. The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, which was released in 1995 for 2 seasons. But yes, so this character debuted in Goodbye, Felix. Debuted in 1919. Feline Follies, and it was very popular. This was back during the era of theatrical shorts, where they would show either a series of cartoon shorts in theaters, or show a cartoon before another feature-length presentation. And this was during the era when talkies didn't exist, talking movies. Like, the Jazz Singer hadn't quite come out yet. So, this was actually a silent film as well. That's how old this is. So, Feline Follies was very successful. And so, Sullivan Studios, Pat Sullivan's company, decided to just quickly make 2 other Felix cartoons. And these were Musical Muse and The Adventures of Felix, which gave bad jump right there. Very, very bad jump. Which, of course, gave Felix the Cat its name. And those were both released in 1919 as well. These were also incredibly successful, and it pretty much cemented the popularity of the character in North America. From then on, there was going to be Felix the Cat, and let me tell you, there was going to be a lot of Felix the Cat. Kind of too much, honestly. There's going to be too much Felix the Cat, as we're going to soon learn. So, we have to sort of talk about why Felix was a little bit popular, and kind of get into what were some of the inspirations for Felix, which are going to soon become a little unfortunate. So, Felix's popularity was due in large part because he was based upon a few stereotypes. And this is directly from the studio as well, from interviews with people who worked at the studio, including Pat Sullivan himself. So this is not hearsay or anything like that. So Felix was based upon 2 different cultural icons. The first was Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was a slapstick comedian, famous for his silent movies. And he was, of course, the main inspiration for Felix. The other inspiration for Felix was, well, unfortunately, his personality was based upon the minstrel shows and Pickaninny caricatures that were incredibly popular back in the day. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the history of racism in the United States, first off, lucky people. Second of all, minstrel shows were a very popular form of comedy with white populations that basically involved usually white actors dressing up in blackface and portraying stereotypical African-American characters, usually stereotyping them as lazy and buffoonish, and just amazed at the simplest things in the world. Needless to say, very, very racist. Pickaninny itself is a term to refer to children of African-American descent, and how they had a tendency to be very boisterous and had a tendency to get up to mischief. So, not great, let's say. And it should be said that the current Felix the Cat does not take after that. That part of Felix the Cat's history is long gone, which is good. But it does bear mentioning because it did contribute in large part to Felix's popularity back in the 20s. Back when America was somehow more racist than it is now. So, Felix ended up having, like I said, maybe the most, it feels like, maybe not the most, but far too many cartoons based upon it. Between 1919 and 1928, 168 animated shorts from 3 different companies were released. J-Spot says Felix is more subtle about it than Boxco, at least. Very true, yes. Felix is at least something that at first blush you would not believe, especially when you look at like later adaptations of Felix the Cat. So there's that. Also, kind of interesting aquatic stage here. I like this. Very, very gameplay here. We're 2 for 2 for licensed games. Well, are we 2 for 2 for licensed games? We might be, actually, on this. I'll have to go back and look at the spreadsheet. So yeah, way too many Felix shorts were released between 1919 and 1928. And by 1928, it sort of had run its course. They stopped releasing new Felix shorts after that. But it was still incredibly, incredibly popular as far as like merchandising and just cultural cachet at that point. Also, appreciate Felix writing that, Dolphin. Because I do. Now, to give you an idea of just how popular Felix was, it had an actual merchandising machine behind it. Complete with, at least inadvertent, celebrity endorsements. Now, give one example. There was a very famous actress at the time. Actress whose name was Ruth Elder. Now, Ruth was not only a famous actress, but she was actually more famous for her aviation skills. She was the first woman to attempt and was nearly successful at replicating Charles Lindbergh's transatlantic flight, flying from New York to Europe. I think the ultimate destination being Paris. She ended up failing. She ended up having to ditch her plane after it experienced engine troubles off the Azore Islands. But she still ended up setting a record for female aviation that day. And on that trip, she brought along a good luck charm with her, which was a little doll of Felix the Cat. Felix also was a mascot who was painted on many fighter planes and bombers during World War II. In fact, on the insignia for the U.S. Navy fighter squadron, the VF-31 Strike Fighters, the insignia that is painted on the tail wings and is also on their patch is of Felix the Cat holding a bomb. So needless to say, Felix the Cat, popular character. Okay, actually, let's just appreciate before we move on Felix's weird subread that's his face with a moving mouth. I don't know why that is, but I love it. I absolutely love it. So regardless of all this, Felix was not putting out any new cartoons, the bread and butter. Now, this isn't to say that Felix was completely gone from any sort of media. There was a Felix the Cat cartoon strip that was had various artists that worked on it, but none more famous than Joe, and I'm going to probably mispronounce this, and I do apologize to him. Joe Oriolo. Spelled O-R-I-O-L-O. So I believe it's Oriolo. Now, Joe was, I believe, the third artist to work on the Felix the Cat comic strip, and he was the one who worked on it the longest time. In fact, he was still working on it in the 50s when he reached a deal with Pat Sullivan's nephew, who was basically the legacy holder of all the Pat Sullivan assets and whatnot from the old Pat Sullivan Studios. And he basically convinced him hey, how about we go ahead and make some more Felix the Cat cartoons? With Joe basically running the entire show. So he agreed to do that, and a new set of animated shorts came out. Now, these established what is basically the current Felix the Cat personality. Also, welcome to Felix in Space. Felix the Cat goes everywhere. So, the first thing about Felix is that he moved away from the minstrel show background. Felix's personality is now much, much different. It's overall a lot more softer and kid-friendly. Kind of like vaguely lazy, even. And with that, he also got a ton more of supporting characters. Specifically, he gained a new villain in the form of the Professor, and the Professor's bumbling sidekick, Rock Bottom. Now, they were after something that Felix possessed, and this was a new thing that was introduced by Joe Oreo. That was Felix's bag of magic tricks. Basically the thing that we've been using as war pipes here, and is what's giving Felix his various objects he's using here. Such as his weird spaceship that he has. Or his tank. So basically the Professor's whole shtick was that he was trying to get Felix's bag of tricks, and Felix was basically playing tricks on him, and, getting one over on him. This proved to be very popular, and Felix the Cat, up through the 70s, kept getting new shorts like every once in a while. And eventually Joe Oreo actually ended up acquiring the full rights to Felix the Cat. Worm says the bag of magic chips is actually fashioned from Doraemon's corpse. Oh no! Felix, what have you done? I don't approve. So, this does point to another innovation, though, that Felix did have. That's something that's, very, very popular nowadays. He's a legacy cartoon character that got rebanded and repackaged for a new audience. And, this is not going to be the first time that's going to happen to old Felix. Because, you see, after Joe gets the full rights to Felix, he is going to eventually spearhead a Felix the Cat movie. Now, he's not going to live to see this happen. In fact, his son, Don Oreo, is going to end up taking over the Felix the Cat license. But in 1988, there would finally be a Felix the Cat full-length animated feature. Unfortunately, it was only released in Europe in 1998. Or 1988, I should say. It was supposed to be released in North America in theaters, but it got delayed until it was released in 1991, direct-to-video, to scathing reviews. But that was kind of the culmination of Felix the Cat. Now, this still wasn't the end of it. As J-Spot mentioned earlier, there was a Saturday morning cartoon that came out in 1995, The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, that ran for 2 seasons on CBS, back when there were Saturday morning cartoon blocks. But after that, it finally disappeared into the cultural ether. There was no more Felix the Cat. It was done. That is until Don Oreo sold the rights to DreamWorks. And now DreamWorks is currently working on a 3D animated reboot of Felix the Cat. Similar to style to that recent Snoopy show, the Peanuts show, the Snoopy in Space. Or is it Peanuts in Space? I forget what it's called. The one where the Peanuts characters go to space for absolutely no reason. Truly just proving that even when your cartoon is over 102 years old, it will never truly die. So look forward to some more Felix the Cat at some point in the future. Felix the Cat with the DreamWorks face. I can't wait. Also, hello Gomakuma, how's it going? The Game Boy is going very well, thank you. And Kuma says, as a kid, we had some kind of encyclopedia of newspaper comic books that had a bunch of major strips with a history and collections of them. So through that, I was familiar with Phoenix and slightly excited when that Saturday morning cartoon started. Oh, fantastic! So you're aware of the Felix comic strip? Yeah, that's pretty great. I don't know how much more we're going to end up playing of Felix the Cat. We're making pretty good progress, so I might just try to beat this, because, once again, this is a legitimately good game. Also, I guess if you want to know what the Professor and Rock Bottom look like, Rock Bottom's the dog, Professor is the old guy. There you go. But yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying this game. Once again, the jumping is a little strange, but it seems to make very good use of the Game Boy's limited real estate. There's relatively minimal slowdown, and it has a pretty good gameplay variety to it. So, honestly, good on Shimada Kikaku for putting this together. They did a pretty darn good job of it. As we end up dying. I have no idea how long this game is, other than it is shorter than the SNES, not the SNES, the NES version. I think we're down to our last life. If we do end up game overing, we are going to move on. So, hopefully we will not do that. We're gonna try our best to not game over. Oh, no, we want that. Ah, darn. We do want to get some sort of power up here, because right now we're in danger of just getting absolutely wrecked. Also, just appreciate the Professor's face just sort of hanging out on the side of that wall right there. Spitting out diamonds at you for no real discernible reason. The lengths that the Professor goes to get Felix's magic bag of tricks. It's quite amazing, really. Quite amazing. Okay, good. J-Spot says that according to How Long to Beat, this game is only about 30 minutes long, which that's usually about how long a typical platform for the Game Boy is. So that honestly makes sense. And given we see the bee in the weird... No! The controls do have almost have a little bit like ice physics to them, by the way. So I just sort of slid off the platform there. So yeah, this seems like the final stage in many ways. Also, I like how I was like only half paying attention to the game and talking about it, and now that I'm fully paying attention, I'm just dying left and right. It's okay. Game's not done yet. Game is not done yet. But yeah, if I had to give like a recommendation as whether or not to play this, honestly, I'd probably recommend it. This seems good. Yeah, I wonder. What's interesting though is the sliding only happened on that platform. There's no sliding here. So I wonder if it has to do with how the platforms move left and right. Some sort of weird knock-on effect with momentum. Oh, I should have stayed on top. Oh well. Ooh, you get some nice invincibility. Oh, a car. At first I thought it was the car, but no. Ah, boo. Oh well. We do have to be... Oh, no! What does the continue set us at? Oh. So lives don't really matter in this game. I'm never a big fan of a continue system that literally just is a substitution for a life system. That always seems kind of pointless to me. They're technically, you are technically penalized in the fact that your score goes back to 0. But, I do have to say, it does seem, rather... It's not particularly punishing. If it's the same penalty as, losing all your lives. But given there doesn't seem to be really much in the way of checkpoints, I guess what would you expect them to do? So, one thing about this jumping... Once again, the jumping is probably about the worst thing in this game. Anytime... The second you let go of the jump button, you just immediately start going to the ground. Which, as you can imagine, will mess you up. Oh boy. Yeah, I messed up that spring. That's very true. That's very true. And, you know, I can't get that Nintendo Power cred. I did submit a score once to Nintendo Power, for Kirby Superstar. Because I beat their part-time for... what's it called? For, Gourmet Rush in Kirby Superstar. Can I go down these? I can. Oh. Well, I'm not going to say no. Oh yeah, you oughta. It's good. It's good. Please, indeed, do listen to the podcast. I'm very proud of our most recent episode of Cardi B. I think it's one of our best. Also, it's the professor, so I'm thinking this is definitely the last stage. And thank you for the plug, Kuma. I do appreciate it. Oh boy. This feels a lot tenser than it actually is. The professor might be able to, like, throw diamonds at us, but he's not particularly good at hitting us. There we go. I have not played Fallout 1 and 2, but I do want to play them at some point in the future. And maybe I will stream them if we do that. We are getting a lot of points, so I'm guessing this is indeed the final stage. Alright, we rescued Felix's girlfriend. So yeah, hey! I didn't expect to beat Felix the Cat, but fantastic. What an unceremonious ending. So Shimada Keikaku, one of the blurbs I found about them was that they were famous for not listing their staff ever. And that appears to be quite true. And that's doing the good old Game Boy screen freezes on the end, so... that's it for that. We should go ahead and move on to our next game. Which is gonna be... Night Quest. Night Quest. So first off, Night Quest is an RPG. Let's just start with that. We're gonna turn Fight to Fast, and we're gonna put money to many. It's this is a game developed by Taito and published by Taito. Taito, a legendary developer, the Space Invaders people. No longer in existence. Square technically owns them now. Released in 1992. Are you only... Worm says, are you only allowed to move in an L shape? Maybe. I don't know what Lunar is. I tried looking that up, but I was not able to find a whole lot of information about that, unfortunately. So this is about something about a man named Prince Will, who left when he was 14 years old to become a knight. Look at these hot cutscenes. I can understand what you want. I'm going to give you a chance. Vanquish the Wild King Goblin, who lives in a cave to the north of this castle. If you succeed, I will allow you to serve me. Alright. So this is an RPG that is stage-based. Also, hi, Kink. And of course, here's our password, which is apparently Bobby Killable. Blah. Probably not. So, Night Quest is an RPG where you only have one player. I do not want to stay. And, you know, you can buy a bunch of stuff and whatnot. I believe you could buy additional weapons and armor. Yeah. Of course, get experience. It has a very cinematic look to this game. Alright, what do we have? We have Sword level 2, which we can afford, so we're gonna go ahead and buy that. And I guess we'll buy some potions. Because of my limited testing, I got absolutely wrecked. JSpot says this takes about 5.5 hours to beat. So yeah, definitely not going to beat this one. So, it's a very interesting game to me because it's an RPG with a password system. Also, here's how these fights look. So, from what I understand, these are just different types of attacks. Like, Swallow's like a weak attack. Also, will counts 10 points against slime. Now, the idea of an RPG having a password system seems ridiculous to me. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. And the reason being is because the thing about this series that we're doing is that every once in a while, we are going to run into a game that I'm going to have absolutely nothing to say about it. What's Eagle, by the way? I want to know. Ooh, that's Eagle. Didn't quite beat him. Darn. See, I'm going to just have games that we're just going to have absolutely nothing to say about. And when you think about it, this game, a game literally called Night Quest. You know, there's not really a whole lot of information out there. I know that Taito developed it, but Taito developed like a million games. And we're going to probably want to talk about Taito when we get to some of their more important titles. There's not really... I don't really know who actually, like, on Taito worked on this, so I can't really, like, talk about who really worked on this and, like, what other games they worked on. And... you know, it's just something that's nothing to say, and that's sometimes it's just going to happen. No information will exist on a product. It might as well have been lost to time or buried in a desert, used as bricks to build a terrible house, whatever. That's just how it is. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So, Night Quest is one of those games. And once again, the most notable thing about it is that it's an RPG that uses a password system. Now, once again, I'm not trying to be mean about it. Sometimes a game is just made and released and moved on, and that's the total story, right? So what I think we are going to do is we're going to use this as an opportunity to hyper-focus on one very specific thing about this. Every game released in North America is going to be on our list, Kuma. So if Mercenary Force was released in North America, it will be on our list. Ooh, level went up. So, this is something I've already mentioned multiple times, but we are going to hyper-focus on the password system. And why password systems exist, and what came to replace it. So nowadays, saving your game is ridiculously trivial, right? Oh, actually, before we do that, do I actually have my sword equipped? I do. It automatically equips. Okay, cool. Yeah, so nowadays, saving your game is absolutely trivial, right? To the point you honestly never have to think about it in most games. Most games either save to your computer or console's hard drive, or onto some sort of writable memory like a SD card or USB stick. As well as auto-saving or uploading it to like a server on the cloud, to the point where you don't even need to have the game physically with you in order to play it. Like, you can play a cloud version somewhere and have your save transfer over. But obviously, that wasn't always the case. And Worms, is actually funny you mentioned Metroid, because we're actually going to use that as an example here in a second. You see, back in the day, that was not the case. And the reason why that wasn't the case has to do with how... Ooh, boy, that's bad. Let's see what's going to happen here. Oof. Let's just do Falcon. How's Falcon going to do? 27. Falcons are very strong. We're going to go back and heal. We're going to fight this imp on accident. So... most games were released on cartridges back in the day, right? And cartridges, how you would put the data on there is you would put them on a ROM chip or read-only memory chip. That is to say, the game code was placed on a chip that once was printed, could not be altered in any way, or at least theoretically couldn't be. You can't really overwrite the information on a ROM, not without some real black magic at the time, to say the least. Now, there's quite a few reasons for this, but why this is like both a good and bad thing. Also, remember to write that password down. That does not actually heal us. We actually do have to stay at the end. Alright, let's stay at the end real quick. Fantastic, I stared at a brick wall all night. So once again, quite a few good or bad reasons for why this is, but we're going to keep this pretty simple and short. Now, in short, in limited likelihood that outside of the chip being damaged itself, nothing could happen that would erase or otherwise alter the game code present on there. So it kind of was like a security measure for this, unless something like catastrophic happened, like the actual chip itself got damaged. So this provided a sense of security for both the consumer and developer. For the consumer, it meant you could like drop a cartridge and it'll be fine, right? Or you could have a power outage and it would be fine. For the developer, it meant that people couldn't just like say, nefarious parties could buy a cartridge and then like alter the game code on there in some way, and like repackage it as something else. My favorite number, 12. Also, hey Lobster, how's it going? So, now the downside of this, however, is that once again, you can't alter the information on these ROM chips. And since you can't alter the ROM information, that meant you couldn't, say, do things like put saves on there. Because you can't alter it to, say, include a save file on there. That could be written and overwritten as need be. Now, for most games, this wasn't an issue. Like, Super Mario Bros. For Nintendo Entertainment System doesn't really need a password system or a save system of any kind. It's a game you could theoretically beat in 10 minutes, right? Your average person. But what about something like Metroid? Metroid was a much more complicated game. And, you know, there was a lot more variables that were present. And it's not a game that you could theoretically beat in one sitting. I mean, obviously speedrunners can, but your average person couldn't. Oh, Lobster, thank you so much for the cheer. I really do appreciate that. That is awfully kind of you, my friend. Very, very generous, and definitely, I do not deserve it. So, you have all these variables that have, like, that, you know, you could potentially lose if you powered down. And Lobster with 12 gift subs. My, oh my, thank you so much. Kittens, Oliva, KP, Warpsican, Centrix, Hogma, Violet Puffin, Retro Havoc, Crazy, Pie Master, Gnome Short, and JK. Enjoy the gift subs. So yeah, once again, Metroid has a lot of variables that you have to keep track of. So how exactly are you going to go about that? Enter the password system, quite literally. So, passwords were theoretically a solution that would allow you to essentially resume a game state at any point, provided you knew the password that would get you back to whatever place you left off. Now, this is going to be a very simple explanation of how passwords work. So let's give you an example. Let's do like a very simple password system, right? Let's say you had a 5 variable password, right? And the password you got was 1234A. Okay? So 5 variables. The variables are 1, 2, 3, 4, and A. What this would represent, for instance, is that maybe the first number 1, would represent the level that you left off on. The 2 could represent what weapon the character had at the time. 3 and 4 could work in tandem to determine what items the character had. And then A would act as like a validation code. Like, if the A was present, that meant the password was valid. But if it was a B, if you entered a B instead, the password wouldn't be. Basically, that exists to make sure that you couldn't just brute force a password. Also, look at this bleeb. Ooh, bleebs are dangerous. So let's say you got this password you entered in, allows you to start from, Samus ends up starting from Bryn Star and now has all of her missiles because of that. Great. Works just fine. So that's how passwords more or less worked. And passwords were neat because theoretically you could make a system as robust as you want and track as many variables as you want, provided you're okay with making the password extremely long. For instance, Metroid had a 24-character long password. And because I had to track a lot of things. I had to track like what weapons Samus had, what armor Samus had, how many bosses Samus could beat, how many E-tanks Samus had, how many missiles Samus had, where Samus saved her game at. So I had to track a lot of things. What upgrades Samus had. So it needed those 24 variables. Something like a standard Power Rangers game might only need 5 because it might just need to track what level you're on. So yeah, seems like a perfect solution, right? Well, not quite. I wonder if we're going to actually live. Nope, bye, Will! Will died horrifically. Oh, good. That's good. Oh, that's actually really regenerous. You keep your level and everything. Nice. Worm says, ran out of willpower, huh? You better believe it. Also, hey, Crazy, how's it going? Once again, Lobster, shout out to you for the gift subs and the bits. I do appreciate it. Definitely appreciate you, friendo. So, once again, there are two issues with passwords. One is that they're extremely complicated. It could be easy to write them down wrong, which will prevent players from resuming their progress and frustrating them. And two, for some companies, passwords are actually not a good thing in a way, because it's a way for passwords are a way for players to bypass content and beat the game in a quick fashion. And some companies were not cool with that. And a reason why is because, if a player gets through a game super quickly, it kind of lowers their satisfaction with the game, especially with how expensive video games were back then. Like, some cartridges were $60 in 1990s money. Which, when you count that for inflation, is something like $90 to $100 nowadays. So you can imagine, if you could beat that game incredibly quickly, it kind of feels like you're not getting your value for it. And passwords gave people a way to bypass that. And since passwords could just be printed in a magazine and were universal, you can see why some game companies were not particularly cool with that. Now, some companies got around that by limiting passwords to, say, like, easy modes. Konami was like famous for that, where like Contra would only have a password system for easy. Whereas like normal or hard, you couldn't use passwords. Just to give an example. So, you have these issues, but once again with cartridges, you can't overwrite data on there. So what possible solution exists out there? Because the obvious solution was just to give everyone their own bespoke save file. Once again, impossible. Except it isn't. So this is where our good old buddies at Nintendo enter the picture. You see, they had technically already solved this problem way back in the 1980s in two different ways. The first way is with the Famicom Disk System. Now, the Famicom Disk System was an add-on to the Nintendo Entertainment System, or Famicom in Japan, where you would use floppy disks. And those floppy disks could have save data written on them. To keep things very, very simple. Now, that worked out great, except the Famicom Disk System didn't really catch on in North America, and nobody else used floppy disks outside of, computers. And Kuma kind of already spoiled it, but Nintendo had another solution. Their dev kits, in order to keep the power on in the game and allow them to continuously code on there, like be able to step away from the computer or whatnot and then resume a game state so I could do debugging purposes, what they did is that they would have variables loaded into a separate RAM cartridge or random access memory cartridge that would be powered using an external battery. That way, Now, RAM's a volatile source of memory. If it loses power, it loses everything, right? It gets completely erased. Hence why you needed the battery to keep it powered up. So Nintendo saw this and said, wait, what if we could miniaturize this? Because it doesn't take a whole lot of RAM to save these variables. We miniaturize it, we put it onto a cartridge, and then just include a tiny long-lasting battery on there. And that's where battery backup saves came into play. Now, the first battery backup save wasn't actually a Nintendo product. It was a 1984 game whose memory I just cannot quite remember right now. But the first NES game, the first console, mainstream console game, was The Legend of Zelda in 1986. That was the first game to feature a battery backup system. Now, this allowed players to have 3 different save files, and you could just save your progress pretty much at any time. Pops and Chips was the game. That's correct. Kuma coming in with the save. Pops and Chips in 1985, which was for a console called the Cassette System Player, I believe. A pretty obscure Japanese console. Ooh, hello, Skyball. Now, that's basically how saves worked for like about the next 10 years or so. A little bit more than that, but let's just say 10 years for the purposes of being simple. Now, this system obviously wasn't perfect for either the consumer or developer. It did have its flaws. Now, for the consumer, the big flaw with this was that RAM, once again, is a volatile form of memory. If it loses power, you lose your saves. And that was actually easier to do than you think. Now, to give an example, you could lose your save by doing things such as turning the console off suddenly. Or just taking the cartridge out of the, taking the cartridge out, or just like unplugging the console or what have you. Or if like the game freezes, it could sometimes mess with the RAM values and cause you to lose data. So that obviously wasn't great. Even something as simple as dropping the cartridge could sometimes be enough to cause you to lose data. So not ideal, right? Not ideal at all. For the developer, there's another issue. This is now an added cost to your game. Obviously, RAM is not free. Batteries aren't free. And by including those on cartridges, that increases their production cost. Now, for developers, video game development back in the day, and really nowadays as well, it's a very fine line between the margins of when it comes to like profit. Like, it's no guarantee that you're going to make a profitable game, and anything you could do to keep costs down is something you're going to have to do, right? So by including these on there, it now makes the cartridge more expensive and makes it more likely that the game you're going to put out is not going to be profitable, which it does not take much to cause a game company to go under in this period. You just need 1 or 2 failures. The problem is, though, is that as time went on, this became the standard. Passwords started to go out of favor in favor of these battery backups. And now it's starting to become an arms race. You see, if you don't have a battery backup save on here for your long video game, your game looks antiquated, right? So because of that, there's now pressure on companies to put this in here, lest they lose out on profits, yet it might make their game unprofitable if they don't sell enough copies of this now more expensive cartridge. It's kind of a catch-22 situation for them. I see you lose half your money when you die. Makes sense. So yeah, it kind of left developers in a rock and a hard place, but, you know, that's just kind of what you had to do. And once again, that's how saves kind of worked until more bespoke types of memory, more memory that was a little less volatile started to be included onto these cartridges, which once again wouldn't be for more than 10 years. So yeah, KPBot says, I think KPBot is the one who said this. Was wondering who would be like the first Game Boy game that would have battery backup, and that's something I should look up. I'm going to look that up later. But yeah, I think we've seen enough of Night Quest. I think we probably should move on from here and move on to our next game, and that's going to be Sunsoft's Daffy Duck. I'm glad you're enjoying it, KP. So this is Daffy Duck, the Marvin missions. So Kuma does drop a little bit of FDS knowledge here. Another thing I think to add about the Famicom disk system not really catching on is another reason for its development was a chip shortage and cartridge size limits, which is very true. But the shortage was then resolved and bigger carts and mapper chips came around and were released. This is true. Kind of outside of scope of talking about the Game Boy, but it is important context to add when it came to like battery backup saves and whatnot. So thank you for dropping that knowledge, Kuma. I do appreciate it. So yeah, once again, this is Daffy Duck, The Marvin Missions. This was developed by Sunsoft and published by Sunsoft. Sunsoft, I'd say somewhat legendary retro game developer, known for their licensed games. Probably most famous for their Batman game on the NES. So this is a quasi-port or perhaps reimagining of the Duck Dodgers game for the Super Nintendo. That was released in 1994. It's vastly different, mind, in terms of level design. Although it does share like some things like the music is very similar. And some concepts such as Daffy having a jetpack, for instance. Although here, the jetpack is not limited, or in the sense of it recharges, whereas in the Super Nintendo version, it did not. In fact, you actually cannot jump here. You only can jetpack. This is different from the Super Nintendo version, which did have a jump. And in fact, according to the cutting room floor, there are actually jumping sprites that are dummied out in this game. So jumping was considered at some point. So, I love the Super Nintendo version of this game. Oh my god. I don't know how you're supposed to dodge that, but... We're just gonna just sit up here and cheese this boss out. I think this is a boss. It is. So, I love the Super Nintendo version of this game. I don't think it's aged particularly well. It was had very maze-like level structure. But, it was just something I ended up greatly enjoying. Because you can get, like, different guns and whatnot. And do, like, different things with them. And, like, there's, like, a bunch of, like, weird secrets hidden all over. It was really cool. KP-Bot says Sunsoft greater than LJN. Yes, not even close. Not even close. Even though, like, mid to late 90s Sunsoft is not really a good place to be. We will not be playing as Marvin the Martian, but we're definitely going to be encountering him if we play this long enough. So there's not a huge... Well, actually, there's a decent amount to talk about when it comes to this game. But we should probably talk about what this is even based off of. So, this game itself, the license, is based off of the Duck Dodgers animated short, released in 1953. This is maybe one of the most famous Looney Tunes shorts ever made. And it stars Daffy Duck as the fictional Duck Dodgers of the 24th and a half century. Now, the short itself was a parody of the old radio drama serials. Buck Rogers in the 25th century. Okay, fine, you win. I'm gonna come down and say hi to you, dog. Your AI got broken. You're just hanging out here now. So yeah, it was based upon this short. And the short involves a very buffoonish Daffy Duck and his sidekick, the Space Cadet, played by Porky Pig, as they go and battle Marvin the Martian. Now, it's once again one of my favorite Looney Tunes cartoons ever made. And while it's only 7 minutes long, it had quite the impact. There was really only one short for the longest time. They eventually did a sequel short in 1980. Gotta do that at the last minute, I see. But yeah, otherwise that was like basically about it. That is until they ended up You gotta really feather the jetpack there, I guess. They eventually did come out with a cartoon in the mid-2000s, or 2010s, maybe? That actually did pretty well, was well received. Ran for a couple of seasons and whatnot. That being so, despite all that, doing great here. Doing great. The cartoon was indeed quite good, yes. So in spite of that, though, it still did inspire... I mean, if you include this as a separate game from the Super Nintendo version, at least 3 separate video games. Because there's this, the Super Nintendo version, and a Nintendo 64 game as well. Called Duck Dodgers starring Daffy Duck. It even helped influence an awful lot of the idea behind Looney Tunes Space Race, which was a actually not bad racing game for the Sega Dreamcast in 2000. Okay, let's just hang out here and just continue just to pellet him. So, for the game itself, once again, it's a very interesting because this is actually a Super Game Boy enhanced title. Kuma says quite good as far as kart racers back in the day. Yes, indeed it was. So, this is not really the time or place to talk about the Super Game Boy, but to give you just a very short overview, it was essentially a Game Boy on a Super Nintendo cartridge that you could plug into your Super Nintendo and play Game Boy games on your TV. And some games were enhanced and could actually have additional graphics, features, or colors added to the games. And Duck Dodgers was, or Daffy Duck I guess in this case, was no exception. Oh, so he just like has like different, interesting. Has different patterns he goes through. So it added a few extra colors. It also changed up some of the background sprites and made them a little bit more robust. The title screen, for instance, actually ended up getting more background elements. In a way that's actually kind of strange. We'll go back to the title screen here in a little bit just to show it off. But the title screen actually might be having a bit of an emulation error and might be accidentally showing off the Super Game Boy sprites. Because it includes like additional things like craters on there and whatnot that should not be present. But still, the point is that it added those graphics. It also actually changed some of the level design. Specifically, the Super Game Boy version, for some reason, is easier. For reasons that I can't quite understand. It ended up, like, removing some enemies from certain screens. As well as kind of, like, making, I think, some platforms, like, a little bit easier. Yeah, you have to kind of feather it there. Got a rapid fire so you can actually get across that gap. It really did. We're gonna do basically like a Super Game Boy hour at some point. That is real mean section, by the way. We're gonna do like a Super Game Boy section at some point that's gonna talk about all the different weird features that could be added. Kind of not really the time and place to do this with this, because it's the only Super Game Boy title we're going to be doing this stream. But yeah, it was really cool how you could do things like add colors to Game Boy games and all this other weird nonsense. How are you even supposed to get through that? Absolutely ridiculous. So, since we're back on the first screen, what if I told you this game had a secret hard mode? So you see this little cart here? If you can get on this cart and you could fly through the rest of the stage without hitting the ground, you'll actually access a hard mode. Now, this hard mode gives you just an entirely different set of stages that require literally pixel-perfect gameplay. Like, you literally have to be pixel-perfect, otherwise you cannot beat the game. Yeah, it's like a weird Kaizo mode. Like, oh, can you do this really hard trick that involves you using momentum to fly through the first screen of the stage? Well then, congratulations, you can now play a harder game. You're clearly a master at this. Yeah, I find little secrets like that incredibly neat, and Daffy Duck has that. And that's just cool. That's just a really, really cool thing. Yeah, it's kind of the first instance of a Kaizo mode. So that's one of the weird secrets. This game also has some really weird bugs. So there's some, in the Game Boy version, there's some bugs involved with the shooting that can get like bugged out on certain stages and certain situations. But what's really strange is that the Super Game Boy fixes these bugs, but then adds some of its own. Which really shouldn't happen because the Super Game Boy literally is just a Game Boy on a cartridge. The whole point of that is to make sure that they're emulation accurate by essentially having all the necessary chips and transistors and whatnot that are necessary on the cartridge, right? So the glitch in question is that if you're walking to your left and you turn right and hit the jump button, I believe it's the jump button, at the same time, you'll actually give yourself 64 health and will bug out the life meter. Which is very, very interesting to me. It's interesting that's something that can even happen. So yeah, very, very strange. Oh, interesting. By feathering, you can also actually gain greater height. Huh. Interesting. So yeah, this game has all sorts of weird things. So as far as how this game plays, I think it makes very good use of the Game Boy real estate. Daffy is not too big. But that being said, these controls are not great. The jetpack, by forcing you to kind of feather in order to get over like large gaps, and also do things like this, makes the game quite a bit tougher than it probably needs to be. Also, as you can see, enemies move very quickly, and you're not really equipped to deal with them. Like, I'm not sure how I was supposed to deal with that enemy. It came at me from an angle that I cannot aim from. And it says I can only shoot left or right or duck. I basically have to know that enemy's coming and duck. So far I'm going to say that this is not as good as Felix the Cat. Apparently we can shoot that platform. Can we destroy that platform? If we shoot 128 times, does it disappear? Inquiring minds want to know. That sometimes happens with active objects in these games. They'll be basically made as, like, NPCs and given health values. And you can sometimes do stupid things to them. I'm sure there's something that's incrementing up. But this is probably absolutely pointless, so let's move on. Kind of funny that's like that, though. Oof. Ow, oh my god! Oh my god! Okay, I'm guessing this is the boss. Oh, it's Marvin! Okay, so I cannot take damage from Marvin. Oh god! Oh, Marvin's using his dehydrated Martians! Oh, I can't take damage from him. Should have been... Kuma says, should have been a Roadrunner game with all the coyote jumps they want you to do. You're quite correct. We're probably going to move on after this first stage, I'd say. So I'm not sure if I have much more to say about this. Other than it's kind of a tough game. We'll do our best, though. We'll do our best. You can also damage enemies by jumping on them. You probably can tell by the fact that I've defeated a couple of Martians that way. Oh, we did. And let's at least play a little bit of the second stage and see what it's like. Gotta wet my whistle with how much talking I'm doing. Okay, I like this music track. The first... I don't recognize this track from the Super Nintendo game. I definitely recognize the, I definitely recognize the first track as being a remix of the first level theme from the Super Nintendo version. It should be noted the Super Nintendo version was not developed by Sunsoft, by the way. It was developed by somebody called ICOM. Not really relevant to this, but it's interesting that Sunsoft did the development work on this, but outsourced development on theoretically the more prestigious Super Nintendo version. It's not like they haven't developed Super Nintendo games before, although they were of, let's call it middling quality. Yeah, Sunsoft is known for... There's going to be other Sunsoft games, so we're going to be talking about them then. But it definitely should be known that they are known to produce some bangers. That really seemed like a secret, but nope, I guess not. Also, I like how that spike drop is basically blind. Real sweet there. Oof. Maybe they did, Kuma. Maybe they did. But yeah, this music's good. I don't think you can get more than 5 health in this, but... Sunsoft versus Hudson Soft, who you got? I'm not gonna lie, I really like myself some Bomberman KP bot, so I'm probably... Oh, look at this. We're on whatever this is. Oh, interesting. Okay, A button... Okay, I think that's gonna do it for us. Yeah, I love myself some Hudson Soft. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our final game today, everybody. And this is a game that's unexpectedly important. And that's going to be Side Pocket. Go ahead and get that loaded up. Side Pocket is a weird game, everybody. You wouldn't think it because it's a billiards game. But it is. So released in 1990, November 1990 actually. This is actually a rare game where we have a month on there that I could actually verify the month that this came out. Developed by Data East USA, apparently, and published by Data East proper. Oh yeah! The title screen makes it seem like it's side versus pocket. Yeah, that's kind of weird. So, this is a link cable game, so there is 2-player play. Obviously, we can't do that here because we don't have another person playing a Game Boy with us. So we'll stick with 1 player. Side Pocket is arguably the most famous video billiards game out there, which seems odd, but, you know, it actually is kind of true. How do you switch to music? There we go. We're going background music too. So, this game was first released in 1986 in the arcades and ended up achieving significant notoriety. Now, before I get into this, I guess I should probably explain what this game even is. It is exactly what I said. It's a billiards game. Has 2 modes in here. We're playing the 9-ball mode. 9-ball, the whole point is to knock in balls in order. Or I think we selected 9-ball. Hope we did. We might have selected just standard pool. Hard to say. Hard to say. We might have, because we don't seem to have like any sort of like lives or anything like that. Yeah, and the objective is to get all the balls in there. Into each of the individual holes. When you play 9-ball, you have to get them in order. When it's just regular pool, it's just like whatever. Just as long as you get a ball in there, you're cool. Which is why I prefer regular pool. I'm absolutely terrible at pool, by the way, video or otherwise, so don't expect this to go well. It's a foul if you end up not getting any balls into the holes, unless you accidentally knock the cue ball into the into one of the pockets. If you do that, that's not a crazy shot. There we go. They keep saying it's a crazy shot, but that's not a crazy shot. So, let's talk a little bit about Side Pocket. Once again, Side Pocket, released in 1986 for arcades. Once again, game where you play a straight pool game. It's a little bit different from the Game Boy version in the sense that you're ostensibly playing against other people. Not really. You're only just trying to beat a target score, but that's just the kind of the overall conceit of the game. Is that you're trying to beat other pool players. And you do that by, of course, beating the target score. Now, the arcade game is presented with a pretty, like, no-frill sort of approach. The whole idea being, like, you're in a smoky bar, and, you know, it's a very, very classy establishment where everyone drinks whiskey and smokes cigars, and there's pretty ladies in nice dresses that are all very impressed by your ability to play pool. And it honestly should be just end there. It should really not have much of anything to say, except once again, this actually did incredibly well for Data East. To the point that they ended up porting it to just about everything. It came out for consoles such as the NES and Game Boy, obviously. Game Boy not a console, but still a system. Also came out for the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Relatively late, too. I think 92 and 93, respectively. Something like that. Now, the legacy behind these ports is where things get interesting. So, the NES version is based off the arcade version, but significantly enhanced with different layouts for the balls at the start, as well as like additional modes and what have you. Improved ball physics. The game ended up being such a success for the NES, it ended up inspiring the physics and overall play, and this is where things get stupid, of Side Pocket's spin-off series. Side Pocket was so popular, this billiards game was so popular, it got a spin-off. A successful spin-off in its own right, called Pocket Gal. Now, Pocket Gal was Japan only, and it's arcade only. And once I tell you about Pocket Gal, you'll understand why. So, Pocket Gal is a game where, once again, you're in a bar and you're trying to beat various opponents. Except your opponents are now beautiful anime ladies. And if you beat the target score, they will get naked for you. And you get to see, you know, the best in 8-bit naked women that you could possibly experience. And it's very, very strange that that exists, but hey, you know. Why not, right? Why not? Why wouldn't you do that? God, I am terrible at video pool. So, that came out and was successful. Now, you'd think that'd be the end of it, but you would be incorrect. Because you see, Pocket Gal got a sequel called Pocket Gal Deluxe. Pocket Gal Deluxe was released, I think, 91 in arcades. And same exact conceit, mind. The conceit being that, hey, you're playing against these beautiful women, and if you do good, they will take off their shirt. And the main difference being that they were more Western-looking women and like more photorealistic. Now, for me, that's actually not the interesting part about it. The interesting part about it is that it actually had significantly different ball physics. And the physics themselves were so different that they actually ended up serving as the basis for the ball physics in the ports of Side Pocket to the Super Nintendo and Genesis. I knew somebody was going to laugh at that as well. Kuma, I'm not disappointed. So, hey, there we go, right? because of that game, Side Pocket for the Super Nintendo and Genesis got their physics and was just further refined. Now, that obviously is not going to be the end of the Side Pocket series. Side Pocket 2 would come out in Japan, and it would actually get a port to the Genesis. In North America, it would actually be rebranded as Minnesota Fats Pinball Legend, or Pool Legend, I believe that's what it's called. It was a Minnesota Fats game, who was a famous pool hustler back in the day. And then eventually there would be a Side Pocket 3 as well, that I don't really know a whole lot about, unfortunately. And yeah, it just ended up being, like, basically every billiards game, every pool game, video game, ultimately will use the basic layout of Side Pocket. This sort of overhead view, the indicator to show where your ball is going to go, for instance, like that's in like pretty much every video pool game I've ever really seen, and is a Side Pocket staple. This is very true, KPBot. KPBot says Minnesota Fats was the antagonist in the movie The Hustler. This is true. Technically, it's another character, but he was a character based upon Minnesota Fats. So, there we go. So, yeah. Just do that. Oh, come on. Oh, wait. Ah, boo. But yeah, so yeah, Side Pocket has just kind of a really weird legacy behind it. Just overall. Now, as far as the Game Boy Side Pocket goes, it's based upon the NES version. And while it's technically a little stripped down, there's it can only go up to a 9-ball configuration. And there cannot be any more than that, unfortunately, just due to graphical limitations. The physics are also considerably simplified. Some shots are basically impossible because you actually don't have as much granular control, because literally there's only so many pixels on the screen, and there's no subpixels or anything like that. Oh, come on! Ah, that would have been beautiful. So yeah, you don't have as much control over this, but overall it does seem like a perfectly fine pool game, I have to say. Doesn't really seem like there's anything too particularly objectionable to it. Which, to be fair, I wouldn't really expect there to be. It's a video billiards game from the people who made Side Pocket, which makes sense because it's Side Pocket. You cannot. As far as ball control... Oh, no, you can, actually. It looks like you totally can. You can. Oh. Interesting. Oh, you might be able to. Yeah, so, yeah, you could do all sorts of crazy stuff, it looks like. Put your mind to it. So that's pretty great. Yeah, I'm not sure how much more we're going to have to really show off of this. I mean, we technically, I guess... Oh, come on, get in. Ah! That's ridiculous. Ridiculous! And that's the nature of pool, though. So the controls are tank controls, except, like, when you get to, like, the far left, then you have to press up or down in order to move around. Or if you get all the way to the top of the screen, then you have to press left or right to move the cursor, which is a little awkward. They really should have just kept, like, left and right moves things. But, hey, you know, it's a relatively minor thing. It's not like it really affects gameplay that much. That seems about right. Hey! And... Oh! I would have gone in! Oh, that would have gone in, but my own cue ball got in the way. My, oh my, how rude. There we go. But yeah. So, just real quick, we're just gonna... I guess I did pocket. No, I did not. I did do actually 9 ball. Let's just hard reset real quick. Just so we can just like jump into the other mode real quickly. And then we'll probably end up calling this very soon. Yeah, pocket is like your more traditional traditional mode that you would see inside pocket. So you have to get to 3,000 points at minimum to move on. And you have only so many attempts to sink balls, represented by the cue balls that are in your kind of like middle upper portion of the left screen. But yeah, 4 stages, which I think is, I'd like to say that's pretty typical. You don't need to pocket them in any particular order. And yeah, you get additional points if you get into the, if you pocket it in a place that has a star. Something for me that's easier said than done. Yeah! Ah! Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it basically is that, like, oh yeah, now I'm gonna sink it in that pocket right there. Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm absolutely garbage in video pool. Just like I'm garbage in regular pool, so I don't expect this to go well. Let's see if we can't beat this first stage, and it will likely go ahead and call it a stream right after that. That's bad. That's a foul. Yeah, and so you just basically lose the entire cue ball that way. Which makes sense. It's actually kind of cool that they have like a more enthusiast sort of mode with the 9-ball mode. Where you don't have to worry about this, like score or anything like that. And then they have the actual more traditional side pocket mode. Which that's good. Well, unless I really pick this up, this is probably done and over with. Yeah, no it's not. That's done. Well, that's maybe... Oh god, that lady is mad at me. Oh jeez. Well, maybe that's the best time to stop this. So that is part 2 of the Game Boy-A-Thon, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this wonderful little journey. And don't worry, we're going to have plenty more games to talk about next week. In fact, let's go ahead and pull up that Game Boy list. Our next 4 games we're going to be talking about are going to be bad. We're going to be taking a look at All-Star Baseball 99, Bubsy 2, Word Zap, and Getaway High Speed 2. So look forward to that, everybody. But that's going to be for next time. Take care, everybody.